There is an invisible war being waged all around us, not with swords or guns, but with words, gestures, and calculated silences. It is a war of influence, where the battlefield is the human mind, and the spoils are control. To walk through life unaware of this struggle is to wander through a labyrinth blindfolded, never knowing when the walls might shift, when a hand might guide you, or push you, toward an unseen precipice. Niccolò Machiavelli, the infamous Florentine strategist, understood this war better than most. His name has become synonymous with cunning, manipulation, and ruthless pragmatism. But beneath the surface of his reputation lies something far more profound: a masterclass in psychological sovereignty. To never be manipulated again is not merely about learning tricks of defense. It is about awakening to the hidden currents of power that shape human interaction. It is about seeing the world as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, dark ocean. The waters are deceptively calm, but beneath the surface, unseen forces pull and push in relentless tides. Most people float passively, carried by these currents, unaware that their direction is not entirely their own. But Machiavelli's wisdom is the compass that allows one to navigate these depths, to recognize the undertows of persuasion, flattery, and deception before they drag you under. His teachings are not just about politics or warfare. They are about the fundamental architecture of human influence. At its core, manipulation thrives on illusion. It convinces us that we are acting freely when, in truth, our choices have been carefully shaped by another's design. The salesman who frames his pitch as concern for your well-being, the lover who withholds affection to provoke submission, the leader who stokes fear to consolidate power, all are practitioners of this subtle craft. Machiavelli does not glorify these tactics. He dissects them, revealing their mechanics so that we may no longer be their unwitting subjects. To resist manipulation is to reclaim something sacred, the autonomy of one's own mind. It is to recognize that every interaction is, in some way, a negotiation of power, not in the crude sense of domination, but in the delicate balance of influence and resistance. Machiavelli's insights teach us that the first step in this reclamation is disillusionment, the stripping away of naivety, the refusal to believe that people always act in good faith. This is not cynicism, but clarity. The world is not a fairy tale. It is a chessboard, and to play without understanding the rules is to guarantee your own defeat. Yet there is a paradox here. The moment one begins to study manipulation, to arm oneself against it, a transformation occurs. No longer a passive recipient of external forces, one becomes an active participant in the dance of power. And with this awakening comes responsibility. To wield such knowledge carelessly is to become the very thing one seeks to guard against. Machiavelli's true lesson is not merely about defense, it is about mastery. Mastery of self, of perception, of the subtle art of reading intentions before they are spoken. This journey begins with a simple, unsettling truth. No one is immune to manipulation. Not the wise, not the strong, not the vigilant. The only true immunity comes from understanding its mechanisms so deeply that they lose their power to deceive. Like a magician who knows every sleight of hand, you cease to be amazed by the trick. You see the fingers moving behind the curtain. To navigate the labyrinth of human manipulation, one must first understand its blueprints, the recurring patterns that define how influence is wielded, concealed, and resisted. Machiavelli's insights, though forged in the fires of Renaissance politics, transcend time because they reveal universal truths about power and perception. These are not mere tactics. They are the invisible laws governing social dynamics, as immutable as gravity. At the heart of Machiavelli's philosophy lies the principle of realism over idealism. Most manipulation succeeds because people cling to comforting illusions, the belief that others are inherently good, that fairness always prevails, that intentions are transparent. Machiavelli shatters these assumptions, not to breed paranoia, but to instill discernment. He teaches that power operates in the realm of what is, not what should be. A ruler, or any individual seeking sovereignty over their own life, must see the world without the filter of wishful thinking. The moment you assume someone is acting purely out of benevolence, you grant them the advantage of surprise. This is not cynicism. It is strategic clarity. Another cornerstone is the concept of controlled perception. Machiavelli famously distinguished between being virtuous and appearing virtuous. In a world where people judge based on surfaces, image is often more potent than reality. The skilled manipulator crafts a persona, the loyal friend, the humble leader, the selfless advisor, while working toward hidden ends. To resist this, one must develop what might be called psychological X-ray vision, the ability to separate performance from motive. This requires observing actions over time, noting inconsistencies between words and deeds, and resisting the seduction of charm when it stands alone, unaccompanied by substance. Then there is the art of calculated reciprocity. Manipulators often use the illusion of generosity to create unspoken debts. A favor given is not always kindness. Sometimes, it is a leash. Machiavelli warns against the trap of unbalanced exchanges, where what seems like goodwill is actually a future claim on your compliance. The antidote lies in recognizing when a gift is truly free and when it carries invisible strings, and in mastering the delicate skill of refusing without provoking hostility. Perhaps the most profound theme in Machiavelli's work is the fluidity of morality in the pursuit of power. He does not advocate for cruelty for its own sake, but he acknowledges that those who rigidly cling to goodness in all circumstances will inevitably be outmaneuvered by those who adapt. This is not a call to abandon ethics, but rather to understand that in the arena of influence, morality is often a weapon, wielded selectively by others to constrain or shame. True sovereignty comes from defining one's own code rather than being ensnared by externally imposed guilt. Underlying all these ideas is the principle of anticipation. Machiavelli's greatest strength was his ability to foresee consequences, to map the likely outcomes of actions before they were taken. Manipulation thrives on the unprepared mind. It strikes when you are reacting rather than strategizing. To never be manipulated again is to cultivate the habit of thinking several moves ahead, not in the sense of cold calculation, but as a chess player studies the board, aware of both immediate threats and long-term positioning. These themes converge into a single, overarching truth. The mind that understands power cannot easily be controlled by it. Machiavelli's genius was in systematizing what many intuit but few articulate, that influence is a game with rules, and those who learn them cease to be pawns. To truly grasp Machiavelli's teachings on manipulation, one must move beyond theory and into the realm of myth, the timeless stories that reveal the hidden contours of human nature. These narratives are not mere fables. They are mirrors reflecting the deeper truths of influence, control, and psychological warfare. They show us, in vivid allegory, what happens when we mistake shadows for substance, or when we forget that every smile can be a mask and every promise a potential snare. Consider the ancient tale of the scorpion and the frog, a parable that Machiavelli himself might have admired for its ruthless clarity. The scorpion, unable to swim, asks the frog to carry it across a river. The frog hesitates, fearing the scorpion's sting, but the scorpion reassures it, "If I sting you, we will both drown." Convinced by this logic, the frog agrees, only to feel the scorpion's venom pierce its flesh midway across. As they sink, the frog gasps, "Why?" The scorpion replies, "It is my nature." This is the essence of Machiavellian realism. People will often act according to their inherent drives, no matter what rational agreements seem to bind them. The frog's fatal error was assuming that self-preservation would override the scorpion's instinct to strike. How many of us have played the frog in our own lives, trusting in the wrong assurances, believing that others would not harm us simply because it would be irrational for them to do so? Machiavelli's lesson here is not to become paranoid, but to recognize that not all natures can be negotiated with. Some must simply be avoided. Then there is the story of the two wolves, a Cherokee teaching often oversimplified as a battle between good and evil within us. But the deeper wisdom lies in the elder's answer to the child who asks which wolf wins, the one you feed. Manipulation, in this light, is not merely something done to us. It is something we allow, even invite, through the choices we make in what we nurture within ourselves. The wolf of naivety, of unquestioning trust, of the desperate need to be liked, will always leave us vulnerable. The wolf of discernment, of quiet observation, of the willingness to question even the sweetest words, is the one that grants true sovereignty. Machiavelli's work, at its core, is about feeding the right wolf, the one that sees the world without illusion, yet does not become monstrous in the process. History itself offers another allegory, the rise and fall of Cesare Borgia, the prince whom Machiavelli both admired and dissected with clinical precision. Borgia was a master of strategic deception, using charm to disarm rivals, staging brutal spectacles to cement his reputation, and always ensuring that his most ruthless acts could be blamed on intermediaries. Yet his downfall came not from external enemies, but from his inability to foresee the one variable even the most cunning often overlook: fortune. Falling ill at a critical moment, he watched his carefully constructed empire crumble, not because his tactics failed, but because he had no contingency for the uncontrollable. This is the symbolic lesson. Manipulation can dominate human variables, but never all variables. The wise strategist, like a sailor who respects the sea's unpredictability, knows that no amount of cunning can eliminate chance, only prepare for its inevitability. Even nature provides its own metaphors. The anglerfish dangles a bioluminescent lure in the darkness, drawing prey into its jaws with the promise of light. The chameleon does not announce its presence with bold colors until it understands its environment. These are not mere survival tactics. They are manifestations of an older, deeper intelligence, one that understands that perception is the first and most malleable layer of reality. Machiavelli's brilliance was in recognizing that human interaction operates on the same principles. The anglerfish teaches us that the most effective manipulations often come disguised as gifts. The chameleon reminds us that adaptability is not weakness, but a form of silent observation, the art of reading a room before deciding whether to blend in or stand apart. These narratives converge on a single truth: manipulation is not an aberration in human affairs. It is a recurring pattern, as natural as predation in the wild. The difference between the manipulated and the sovereign lies not in avoiding the game, but in understanding its rules so thoroughly that one can step outside its grasp. The true test of Machiavellian wisdom lies not in theoretical mastery, but in its seamless integration into the fabric of daily existence. Like a master jeweler setting precious stones into a golden band, we must carefully embed these principles into our lives without distorting their essence or losing our humanity in the process. The path to becoming manipulation-proof is neither about developing paranoid suspicion nor about adopting ruthless cunning. It's about cultivating what might be called enlightened discernment, a state of awareness that allows one to navigate human interactions with both clarity and grace. Consider the workplace, that modern arena of subtle power struggles and veiled ambitions. Here, Machiavelli's principles manifest in the colleague who always volunteers for high-visibility projects while quietly shifting blame for failures onto others. They appear in the manager who dangles promotions like carrots, never intending to deliver but always maintaining just enough hope to ensure compliance. The antidote lies in developing what intelligence operatives call situational awareness, the ability to read the room's undercurrents while maintaining one's own strategic position. This means observing who gains from certain arrangements, who consistently avoids accountability, and which favors come with unspoken expectations. It's not about becoming cold or calculating, but about recognizing that even professional environments operate on hidden economies of influence. In personal relationships, these dynamics become more intimate and therefore more potentially damaging. The Machiavellian lens reveals how toxic partners use intermittent reinforcement, alternating between affection and withdrawal, to create addictive attachment. It exposes the victim who manipulates through guilt, or the helper who cultivates dependence. Protection begins with establishing what ancient philosophers called the inner citadel, an inviolable sense of self that cannot be shaken by another's approval or disapproval. This manifests practically in small but powerful actions. Learning to sit comfortably with silence during emotional negotiations, recognizing when tears are being used as weapons, and maintaining the ability to walk away from relationships that demand the surrender of one's autonomy. Financial interactions present another fertile ground for applied wisdom. From the car salesman creating false urgency to the investment advisor recommending products that earn them the highest commission, economic manipulation thrives on exploiting cognitive biases. The sovereign individual approaches such transactions with what the ancient Chinese strategists called the mind like still water, calm enough to reflect reality without distortion. This means always asking who benefits from this narrative. When presented with financial advice, recognizing that scarcity is often manufactured, and understanding that contracts exist not to clarify but to obscure loopholes for those who draft them. The digital age has introduced new dimensions to these age-old games. Social media platforms engineer addiction through variable reward schedules, while algorithms manipulate our attention by feeding our existing biases. Political actors micro-target messages based on psychological profiling, and corporations employ dark patterns in website design to trick users into unwanted purchases. Countering these modern manipulations requires what might be termed informational hygiene, curating one's media diet with the same discernment one would apply to physical nourishment, recognizing when outrage is being monetised, and periodically detoxing from the constant drip of engineered stimuli. Yet for all these practical applications, the deepest protection against manipulation remains philosophical. It's the cultivation of what the Stoics called ataraxia, a state of unshakable inner peace that makes one immune to psychological coercion. This develops through daily practices, the habit of pausing before reacting to emotional triggers, the discipline of distinguishing between what one can control and what one cannot, and the wisdom to know that no one can manipulate you without your unconscious cooperation. The truly sovereign individual reaches a state where attempts at manipulation become transparent, even amusing, like watching a child attempt to deceive a chess grandmaster. We stand at the threshold of a profound realization that freedom from manipulation isn't about learning tricks but about achieving a fundamental shift in consciousness. Like Neo in the Matrix seeing the digital code beneath his world's illusions, the Machiavellian student reaches a point where the mechanics of influence become visible in their naked workings. This is not a cold or joyless state, but rather one of empowered clarity, the psychological equivalent of an immune system that recognizes and neutralizes threats before they can take hold. The transformational journey begins with a simple but radical act: the decision to take full responsibility for one's own perceptions. Just as a ship's captain cannot blame the sea for storms, we cannot blame manipulators for doing what comes naturally to them. We can only sharpen our ability to navigate their currents. This means embracing discomfort as the price of wisdom, recognizing that painful truths are always preferable to comforting illusions, and understanding that true power lies not in controlling others but in mastering one's own responses. Machiavelli's ultimate lesson may be this: the world will always contain those who seek to influence, control, and manipulate. This is its nature. But there will also always exist those rare individuals who cannot be moved against their will, who walk through the marketplace of influence with their eyes open and their discernment sharp. This is the invitation before you, not to become manipulative, but to become unmanipulatable, not to play the game of power, but to transcend it entirely. The choice, as always, is yours. Will you continue to drift in the currents of others' designs, or will you seize the tiller of your own destiny? The path of sovereignty awaits those bold enough to claim it.